And I have one foot on the tile, I have one foot in the room, and I'm listening to this music and I just start moving my body and like dancing just a little bit. And I have this thought to myself, go in the center and dance. And I think, no, I can't do that. I don't want to take up that much space. I don't want to draw that much attention. I don't want to disrupt people's experience.
This is The Deep Dive with Adam Roa.
What's up, deep divers? Hello. Welcome to another episode of the Deep Dive podcast. We are doing a deep dive musing today, which means it's just you and me, Adam Roa, here to share with you my experience at Arkana Spiritual Center. I went down to Mexico and I was able to sit in a series of plant medicine ceremonies through Arkana, and it was powerful. It was powerful. I don't know that I've ever done that much medicine in such a short window of time. To give you some idea of the actual process here. The actual process here is I had a sweat lodge on Sunday. Monday was psilocybin, which is mushrooms. Tuesday was mushrooms. Wednesday was ayahuasca. Thursday morning was bufo, which is 5-MeO-DMT. Thursday evening was ayahuasca. Friday evening was ayahuasca. I left on Saturday. So I've done a lot of medicine in my day. I think that I've probably sat around 50 ayahuasca ceremonies in my life. But I don't think I've done that many medicines, that much of it in 1 week like that ever. And so, as you might imagine, it was incredibly powerful. I learned a lot about myself. I learned a lot from the shamans and the facilitators and the epic staff at Arkana. I was very excited for the psilocybin journeys because I think the first time that I ever did psilocybin was when I was 18 or 19 years old. And I've done it, I don't even know how many times since then, but I've never had the opportunity to sit in a traditional indigenous shamanic ceremony with psilocybin. And a lot of people don't even know that. They think about magic mushrooms. They think about kids getting messed up at festivals or something, but they don't necessarily relate it to a lineage of shamans. And it has a deep lineage in Mexico. So really powerful. And I want to share with you today just some of what that experience was, take you through a bit of the journey that I went on and why I've chosen to do this, because I'm not going to use this opportunity to really dive into all of the messages that I received from the medicine. I actually did an event in Tulum, Mexico, 1 week after leaving Arkana, where the event's called Messages from the Medicine, and it was in partnership with Humans I Trust. And we'll leave actually in the show notes of this episode, we'll have a link if you're interested. It's a multi-hour event where I specifically go in and I share a lot of the messages and the wisdom that I got from the medicines. And so for those of you who are interested in that, you can use the code DEEPDIVE to get a discount on that. So I just check the show notes. We'll have all the information. For this podcast, what I want to do is really focus on why I chose to go to Arkana, what the actual experience was like, and some of the big takeaways from it on a much more meta level. And I think this is important because we often go into our life, and I say often go into our life. We are lifing in every moment. And yet so few people really look at life as ceremony. And it's something that I've developed over the last several years more and more, which is this viewpoint of life as ceremony. And to me, ceremony is when you combine action with intention. When you combine action with intention, you create ceremony. And the more that you can be intentional with every action you take in your life, the more your life becomes ceremony. And the reason why that's important is because when we enter into ceremony, we welcome in the grace of God. That's what it actually means to me, is to go into ceremony, is to welcome in the divine consciousness that's beyond this one human that is Adam Roa. I go into a ceremony, whether that's breath work, whether that's a tantric sex magic, whether that's plant medicine, whether that's going to the gym, even like going into it and saying, I'm ready to receive the presence of God at a deeper level, because that's my intention, and I'm creating the space for that to happen. That's the action that I'm taking. And when your life becomes ceremony, you now have created the opportunity for God's grace and the divine consciousness of all existence to filter in to your life at a deeper level. And so there's a real opportunity there in creating ceremony. And so that's how I view my life in general, and why I'm so intentional with every aspect of it. And when it comes to the medicine specifically, I hadn't sat until Arkana. I had not sat in an ayahuasca ceremony for a year and a half. And, you know, when I say to some people, yeah, I've probably sat about 50 times in my life, a lot of times I hear, wow, that's a lot. That's a very common, oh, that's a lot. And I went a year and a half without sitting. And then I went down to Peru and sat with the Shipibo tribe 8 times in 2 weeks. You know, this past trip to Arkana was 3 times in a row, 3 nights in a row for ayahuasca. And so I flow in and out there. It's not something that I have any sort of structure to. There's no calendar to it. It's when I feel the call, I answer the call. And so for a year and a half, it felt like what I was being asked to do was to integrate everything that I'd learned, and to learn how to show up for myself in very grounded, practical applications. Moving through depression, COVID, with deep lessons around creation. You know, during COVID was when I launched my online community, thecreatecommunity.com. Create stands for the collective renaissance of education, art, transformation, and entertainment. It is a personal development community that is focused on supporting people with business and finance, relationships and sexuality, and creativity and self-expression. And this process of launching that community was not something I had planned. I didn't design a business and go, I can't wait to launch this business. It was COVID hit, and I looked around and said, what do people need right now? And they need community. They need a hub to come together and to learn and continue to grow during this very difficult time. And so I felt like I was being asked to learn and to grow through the doing of that, through the releasing of music and the making of music. And so there was so much that I was focused on that didn't require me to go back to the medicines. However, over the last several months, I'd been feeling that call bubbling up in me. I could feel that there was something coming alive, that grandmother, Aya, was calling me back, and it was only a matter of time. And so once I feel that, there's no forcing it. You know, sometimes I'll take action. I'll reach out to some friends of mine and say, hey, are there any circles or sits that you have upcoming that I could possibly sit in? And if it's a no, it's like, okay, now's not the right time. And shout out to one of my soul sisters, Blue, because she went down to Arkana and she sat in a ceremony there, and through that process sent me a message when I got a chance to speak to her, and she said it was next level. It blew her mind. And we had both sat actually in the same village in Peru. and got to experience some really powerful medicine there. And for her to give a stamp of approval for just how powerful this was, I said, sign me up. Can I go? And it was full at the time, but she reached out to the owner and got me in. And here I was answering the call. And when I showed up to Arkana, I flew into Cancun, and I was just, still processing so much. I'd facilitated at Sacred Sons. I'd been doing a lot of facilitation. I felt like I hadn't really taken the time yet to drop into, okay, what is my clear intention for being here? And I actually have my journal here. And I think one of the ways to create vulnerability and let you know what was alive for me is read it directly out of my journal. And I'm going to read to you the intentions that I had going into Arkana. The first one was to release any old energetics, thoughts, or beliefs that are not a match to this next chapter of my life. The second one, to receive any clarity or guidance around this next chapter of my life as a devotee to the muse of creativity. And lastly, to more deeply understand my resistance to the new age spiritual stuff. And so I had these three, and to elaborate on those, I feel as if I have really stepped into a new chapter of my life. I've spoken about how I've devoted my life to creativity. And if you are not aware of what I'm talking about, go and listen to the previous podcast about this. I released a podcast around creativity and why I think creativity is so important, and actually devoting my life to it. And so I wanted to release anything that wasn't a match to this next chapter. And I also wanted to gain any clarity or guidance around this next chapter, because I've never considered myself, I thought, okay, I'm here as a vessel for spirit to move through me. And yet I'd never chosen to devote myself to something, to make my life about that thing. And to do that in a ceremonial way for creativity, the muse of creativity, was a very big deal for me. And so this new chapter that I have been stepping into, that I'm in now, I could use some help, grandmother, let me know, let's check in. And so when I got clear about that, I entered into this space, and there's three parts to ceremony, really. There's the intention, there's the ceremony, and there's the integration. And entering into a week like I was at Arkana, I see the entire thing as one big ceremony. That means that each individual medicine journey is building on itself and creating an arc. And so there were some difficult moments. To be honest with you, I would say the first half, maybe up until the Thursday, Friday, the last two ceremonies, there was a lot of difficulty. There was a lot of frustration. There was a lot specifically around feeling isolated, feeling outcast, feeling unliked, not liked, feeling, and then that triggering this part of me going, well, why am I not liked? What did I do? And then that part of me that is wondering, should I overcompensate for that? And these dynamics happen in ceremony, but they also play out outside of the ceremony and interacting with other people, because there are 20 something people that were a part of this retreat. And so as I was at Arkana and moving through this, I kept reminding myself in those frustrating times, hey, there's an arc here, that you're not done yet. It will resolve itself. This is act 1 or act 2. Act 3 will appear. Just be patient. And I think that that's really applicable to all of our life. We have our individual ceremonies, our individual journeys, and that could look like a relationship that you have. That could look like a job that you're working. That could look like college, the 4-year journey. We have these little micro journeys that we take within a greater journey that is our life. And it's very valuable to remember when we are in the micro journey that there's still a macro journey that we're a part of, and it's not done.
What up, deep divers? Just wanted to take a quick second to let you know about the upcoming Create Community Festival. It is June 25th, 26th, and 27th. 3 full days of programming. Once again, just like in January, I am bringing in some of the world's best facilitators to cover the areas of relationships and sexuality, business and finance, and creativity and self-expression. We are going to have a Facebook group for an entire week full of programming, and I would love to see you there. If you've been looking for a deep dive into your own growth in any of these areas, this is the time. You can put in the code DEEPDIVE to get 10% off your ticket, just as a thank you for being awesome and being a part of this podcast tribe. I love you so, so much. Back to the episode.
I've had the chapter of depression. And if I think, wow, my entire life is this now, that's only going to amplify the depression. That's going to remove the hope. That's going to remove the awareness that this too shall pass. And so I think that's a valuable lesson to apply to our lives, especially when we're going through something difficult. And so I arrived at Arkana and began with the sweat lodge. And the sweat lodge is really the womb. That's how it's described. You go in, it's pitch black, it's very hot, and you're in there and you're sweating and you're releasing and you're praying. And it's about going into the womb of creation and then rebirthing yourself. And you come out and you're rebirthed anew. And so much of this is about how do you actually shed it? What are you leaving behind? If you're going to consciously rebirth yourself anew, what are you choosing to leave behind, and what are you choosing to claim? And now imagine applying this to life itself, because that's really, even as I'm speaking this, I'm so clear, is I treat my life as ceremony. And so when I go into a week-long experience like Arkana, where it's a week-long ceremony made up of like 6 little ceremonies, what are these meta viewpoints of how to apply this to my life? So in the sweat lodge, how about applying that to when you walk out the door of your home? What does it look like to say, okay, what am I leaving here? And what am I claiming as I leave this front door of my house? How can I make this a ceremonial exit? The way that when I crawl on my hands and knees after sweating for 2 hours in the Temescal and I leave that sweat lodge, I always take a moment and I bow my head and I say gratitude and thank you, and I claim who I am now. If I'm going to do that leaving the Temescal, what about leaving my house? How can I apply that lesson there? And so leaving that sweat lodge, going to sleep, waking up the next day, knowing that I'm going to enter into this traditional indigenous ceremony of psilocybin. And it was a big one. It was 9 grams. It was a big one. And man, was it powerful. Super powerful. And the biggest lesson that I want to share here is actually a little mini story from what happened in that ceremony, because now you imagine me on 9 grams of mushrooms. So that's Terence McKenna called 5 grams a heroic dose. So 9 grams is a significant dose. And you can imagine moving on this, walking to the bathroom and walking back. And at a certain point, there's music being played and I start dancing. But I'm entering into the space and the music's right in front of me. And there's this big open area. So everyone's sitting in this circle, right? So there's this big open area in the middle and I'm dancing. And so I'm walking on the tile back from the restroom, and there's this like yoga padding that is what all the beds and what we're all sitting on. And it's tile outside of the room. So I'm walking back to the room and there's music right here at the entrance. So I stop. And I have one foot on the tile, I have one foot in the room, and I'm listening to this music and I just start moving my body and like dancing just a little bit. And I have this thought to myself, go in the center and dance. And I think, no, I can't do that. I don't want to take up that much space. I don't want to draw that much attention. I don't want to disrupt people's experience. And so I stay literally 1 foot in on the yoga mat stuff and 1 foot out on the tile, and I just dance in this space, right? And at a certain point, because of the tile and the sweat on my foot, I slip and I stumble back. It might have had something to do with 9 grams of mushrooms as well, but I stumble backwards. And as I stumble, I like grab onto the door thing and I make a bunch of ruckus, and I have definitely just disrupted some stuff. And 2 of the helpers come and get me and basically in the nicest way possible tell me to go sit the fuck down. And I go and I'm so embarrassed. And I sit down and I'm like shaming myself for disrupting something. And at a later point in that ceremony, there's music being played, and Blue, my friend Blue, gets up, gets into the middle and dances, does this beautiful like ballerina dance. And I'm just watching her and going, this is so beautiful. I don't feel like she's encroached on my space at all. I don't feel as if she's taken up too much space. I loved getting to watch and observe her express in that way. Why didn't I do that? Why did I think I was too much if I did that? And as a result of being literally 1 foot in and 1 foot out, I caused more disruption than if I had just gone all in. And so I literally wrote that in my journal on the integration. If you're gonna dance, dance. Don't be 1 foot in, 1 foot out. And so that was such a powerful lesson to get on the first medicine journey and then apply to the rest of them. I'm all in. This is how I get to live my life. Unapologetically, all in. Yes, respect the space. Yes, understand the nuances of where you are, the environments you're in, the people you're around, all of that stuff. This isn't about being just do whatever the hell you want. But if you're going to do something, bring all of you. Be all in. Do it in excellence. And the only way to do it in excellence is if you are fully there. So this is a powerful, powerful one for me. That led to a next night of psilocybin. And then Wednesday came and it was ayahuasca. The first time that I had sat ayahuasca in a year and a half. Oh, I missed grandmother so much. If you've been following my journey for a few years, I have a few podcasts where I've talked about plant medicine and specifically ayahuasca. Ayahuasca was the catalyst for my spiritual awakening. And it has been one of the biggest teachers in my entire life. I've learned so much. I've been gifted so much from this medicine, and it was so good to come back to it. And again, without getting so much into the actual lessons that I received, I was blown away by the level of facilitation that was happening at Arkana. I was blown away by the shaman, Maestra Justina, and her chants, Shipibo. It was beautiful. It was incredible. And I went through that first one was really hard, really, really hard for me. And I actually have some YouTube videos up filming myself after my ayahuasca ceremonies. After each one, I did 3 of them. And so if you're interested to see what I learned and how I was coming out of that first one without any sleep, you can check out the video on YouTube. And the lesson, I told you there's 3 parts here, right? There's the intention, What is the intention to your life? I told you why that's important is because when you combine action with intention, you create ceremony. And then the ceremony itself, the facilitation, the sacredness of the space is so important. Sitting in a plant medicine journey that is not well facilitated in a container that's unsafe is honestly dangerous. And playing in those realms where everyone's so open in the realms of the esoterics with beings and entities and layers of consciousness that are you're opening yourself up to with your heart blasted open, it's important that it's held. And this is applicable to our everyday life. This is applicable to who are you surrounding yourself with in your everyday life as ceremony that is holding you? How are you creating your life in a way where you've actually allowed yourself to feel safe in your world that you've created? As you move through your days and you're talking to your family members and your friends, are they the people that you actually feel safe being in ceremony with? Or are they just spouting out their own wounds and traumas and entities and BS to you, and you constantly have to be on guard? This is super important to recognize and apply to our lives. If we are treating our lives as ceremony, we get to look at what makes ceremony safe and effective and healthy and make sure that we're applying those rules to our own life. And so I sat in 3 ayahuasca ceremonies. I did get my Act 3. I did get to some completion. And then came the integration. And this is something I'm in right now, literally. You can imagine, I think at the time I'm recording this, I'm only 2.5 weeks removed from these ceremonies, and I'm still integrating. And integration is about more, I think I wrote this in my actual journal here, which is that integration is more than just the application of what you've learned. Integration is also the time for your body to catch up. Integration is the time for your brain to apply the new knowledge, because it's kind of like, so I come from a sports background. I used to train mixed martial arts. I was a wrestler, and they say the game slows down. And so with fighting, for example, where you say boxing, when you first start boxing and someone's swinging at you, it just feels like they're coming at you so fast, and all you can do is cover up and not get punched in the face. And when you start to learn technique, then what happens is the punches slow down, and so they can come at the same speed, but now you're able to see them coming and you can avoid them. You can be with it differently. And yet, then if you fight someone, you spar with someone who's even faster, even better, you can revert back to bad habits because it's too fast. You haven't acclimated. And I equate that to integration, which is you could go and learn something from a medicine journey. You could learn something powerful about yourself or the world or a shift that you want to make in your life. But if you go right back into life, your old life, without giving yourself space to integrate that and learn that and for the neurology of your brain to catch up, then what happens is you're training, like going to boxing training, but then immediately stepping into the ring with something that's too fast. And therefore, all you're going to do is revert back to old habits. You're going to go to what is unconsciously stored in your muscle memory. So it's important for you to acclimate the new information at a slower speed, a slower rate, so that you can actually have quote unquote good form. That's the analogy that I have here. And so this is not just about plant medicine ceremonies, right? When we're looking at life on a bigger, like the meta level, this is also about just every experience that you are having that is giving you new awareness and is activating a part of you that wants to make new decisions and shift something in your life. Are you giving yourself the space to do that? Are you slowing down enough to be able to make new choices in your life and actually follow through on them? Wow, I just realized that I want to spend more time, one of my lessons, I want to spend more time in prayer, in actual prayer and devotion. developing my relationship to God, to Spirit, so that I can deepen my faith. That's something I left Arkana with. And so imagine that I come back and all I do is fill my schedule with all of the work and all of the things. How am I going to actually implement that? If I slow myself down and say, okay, what does it actually look like? Because I don't know. Let me give myself space. And maybe 6 months from now, I have a firmer idea of and hold on what prayer and devotion is to me, and I can find it in these little moments. And on a day where I'm really busy, I still find it in those little moments. But as I'm learning how to do that, I need more space. I need the punches to come slower. And so my time at Arkana was powerful in solidifying for me how my life is ceremony, how our lives are ceremony. We are in mini ceremonies each and every day, each and every moment, and we are in macro ceremonies of a lifetime, of many lifetimes. And I'm so grateful for the opportunity to work with Arkana Spiritual Center. For those of you who are listening to this who are like, I want to do that. I want to do that. You can send me a message. I believe that they're allowing me to offer a discount to you on a retreat. So if you're actually very serious and you do want more information, let me know and I'll get you the discount code. We'll probably actually put it in the show notes as well, so that you can have it. And I've sat in a lot of ceremonies. I am letting you know that I do recommend Arkana Spiritual Center for someone who is looking for a retreat experience and to experience the medicines in a way that feels safe and you feel held. And more importantly, I don't believe that everyone has to sit with the medicine. I don't believe that it's necessary. And that's part of the reason why I'm sharing here today with all of you, is because I want to, sure, I'm the one who's gone down there into the jungle and sat and thrown up in the buckets and all of the things. And here I am sharing with you what I'm going to be applying to my life. And you can too. You can be more intentional with your actions. You can live your life in the safety of ceremony. And you can give yourself space to integrate the lessons you're learning each and every day. Give yourself space to integrate the lessons you've learned from this podcast. I'm going to be doing that. I'm going to be applying these lessons to my life. And I'm going to be continuing to deepen the ceremony that is life. Thank you so much for listening to this. Thank you for being a deep diver, willing to look at all of this and to continue to be a bright, shining light for the rest of humanity. I appreciate you so much and want to remind you that always, in all ways, you are seen, you are heard, and you are loved.